Did you get a folder? I'm right here. Okay.
Hey, Calvin, I'm holding.
I'm 60 and I'm out now.
Hey, we love that. That's good. We can make you have a table over here for more people.
I just added that table back.
Another table here down there, so comfortable. Yeah, check it out. All right, class. Yes. I think we're ready to get started. And you go ahead and take over. Hey, for lunch today, lunch is what I saw on the agenda is 11:15. And,
Anybody need
anybody need 11:15?
We need
So, there's some places around here, you know, into town, close on the site, 20, you should be able to make it back.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Good morning.
I'm Amy Willis. I work for the State Department of Education, but before I got the job there, I taught ELA and also history to 7th, 8th, and 9th, and 10th during the course of my 21 years of teaching. You might say, well, then she doesn't understand the elementary classroom. But I have I taught inclusion. So then I do have to tell you that in a way, I do understand the elementary classroom. Because I had to scaffold everything I did for regional, second, and third grade level. You know, I had to expose them to on-grade level tests, but I had to create the scaffolds that made that possible. So that they could, you know, base the assessment that all students face. So anyway, I am deeply passionate about kids, about learning. You're going to find that. You're like, man, she actually believes this stuff. It's almost like we're in church. But my husband is a pastor, and so that's another reason why you sound like we're in church, because I'm going to go off on this big sermon. So y'all just let me know, like, raise it. Okay, so what we're going to do today is, first of all, even though I know it's a done deal, and you're doing the guidebooks, we've already got that established, I'm going to do a presentation to sell you on the guidebooks first, okay? Just so that in case, I know what you've got all the negatives to build up in your head of the things that are not good about this decision. That's easy to do. But what made this decision happen? What were the discussions that I had with Kay and Julie that brought about this, you know, this change? So that's where we're going to start. So I have a morning agenda. These are the things we plan to do before we go to lunch. Okay. I'm going to like pretend like you've never seen the guidebook, even though I know you have. But I'm going to pretend like you have it, and I'm just going to try to sell you on it. Then after that, I'm going to give you a chance to dig in, because I want you to be able to click around and like write down questions as you click and see stuff. What does that mean? What is this? I don't understand how to use it. I want all that out. Then we'll have a Q&A session where you will be able to say, okay, I clicked on this, and I don't even know what this is. We'll really actually dig into any questions you have. Then finally, this was something that we thought was going to be a deal breaker for teachers, and that is to see a lesson from the guidebook, which was chosen by the coaches, to be demonstrated for you, modeled for you, start to finish in a classroom situation. So you will be the class. There will be a teacher who will present, and then every so often I will say, stop, talk, and there will be a series of questions that you will be debriefing about what you just saw, and that will happen on the way to lunch. So then you can go to lunch and talk about what you saw. Then when we come back, the second half of the day will be, okay, now that we know this is a reality and this is what's really happening, let's try to take what happens in Guidebook 2.0 and put it on a Bossier lesson plan. Because that's another big question you guys have. How do I convert this big old thing into something that I can turn in when you have to turn in paperwork? And then after you do that, and we all share out, well, this is what mine looks like, that's what yours looks like, okay, we're all good. Then we're going to divide and conquer. We're going to say, okay, this unit has 25 lessons, you guys are 1 through 5, you guys are 12, and we're going to knock out the lesson plans. I mean, it's huge. That's a huge burden for you. And a chance for all of you to really dig in and look at what is going to be part of that unit. So that's our plan for the day.
Amy, I have sent them the electronic version
the lesson plan, so if they want to do it, type it electronically, that'd be good, because it'll be easier for them to submit to me, and I can share and put it on Google.
Yeah, that's all, I have that on a little, slide, but,
Okay.
that's, yeah, great, awesome. All right. So, there really was a three-pronged approach to the decision to move here, to Guidebooks, okay? And what it really boiled down to was these three things. One, looking at data, which I'm going to do with you. There's nothing like data to really clarify a picture of what is the trend showing and what are we going to do about it, which is the discussion that we had. So I'm going to share that with you. I don't know if this is large enough for you to see it or not, but if it isn't, I will read it out loud to you, whatever it is. I just want you to see it. Second thing is alignment, which Julie mentioned. She said, it's the guidebook has a lot of the same people in control of it that are also in control of the kinds of things that we are assessing. And to know that those two things are as closely aligned, well, not as, more closely aligned than anything else, means that makes sense for us to be showing our kids a steady diet of the level of rigor that we are asking. Third was that we know that social studies is changing. And so when it was time to pick a unit, we definitely wanted to pick a unit that was based on nonfiction, just because that is heavily represented in our testing. And also it can be something that you can cross over and use as part of your social studies instruction. So we're going to dig into those three things right now. First of all, I want to show you trends data. This is data. You have a copy of it. Yay. Okay, I hear y'all turning pages. Yay. Okay. I didn't know if y'all had this. I didn't know what they copied for you, but if they got this and you can see it,
I did, I got
like,
my
thank you. Okay. All right, so. Anybody who didn't know now does, if it's all right there. Okay. While everybody's turning pages and trying to locate where we are, I know Kate said this, but I want to just reiterate it, and that is, I know what a sacrifice it was for you to come today. And let me explain what I mean by that. As the summer goes by, at the first of summer, you're like, endless summer, you're like, oh, I have this feeling that I can just do it. And then when July 4th hits, I don't know if it's the same for you, but the whole family's like, yay! And I'm sitting there going, we're watching the fireworks, and I truly would have a panic attack during the fireworks, because I knew that meant, you know, PD class, that we actually class. And there's something about that. And then when you get to the last week of July, and you know it's about to be solid, every day is a pearl. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to give up this pearl for anything. I don't even want to buy new uniforms, but to my kids, I don't even want to go uniform shopping because I need to stay at the pool. You know, I don't know if you know what I mean, but it's like a sanity thing. You're like, I only get so many precious ones of these. So the fact that you are willing to sacrifice one of your pearls today, thank you. Thank you. And I promise I'm going to try to make it as much worth your time as possible, because I'm going to try and save you from headaches by doing this. Okay, so back to this, now that everybody's got their pages turned. So here's ELA, okay, and this is 2 years, okay, of data, 2015, 2014, okay, and there's actually, we can go further back and see that it has been declining for a couple of 4 years of this. But I wanted you to see third grade, first of all. We're going to look at all grade. But in third grade, how many advanced did we have 2 years ago? 180. How many advanced do we have last year? 34. Okay. Okay, but then, so that might have been because we took this park assessment, right? Okay, this is what this data is. And so that was the thing I think that a lot of the Bossier people were telling themselves. It was a shift in the test, remain calm. But one of the things I shared with them was that, yes, there was a shift in the test, but statewide, this was not the trend. If at all, there was a slight dip, but for most people, it was not a dip at all. Just switch to park. So the fact that what this really revealed was an alignment issue, that we were continuing on a track that was not matching what our new standards are showing, it was becoming increasingly evident. So not just do I want you to notice the shift in some of these things, like unsat went from 144 to 212. Not just that, but the one I called to their attention was the assessment index, which is the measurement of each of your schools, and it's also the way they measure the district performance score. And she noticed they all did. This was a 10-point drop in 1 year in that. Okay. Now, that shows that we need to make some adjustments. Okay. And it wasn't just third grade, which is another thing you think. Okay, these are the babies who are being tested for the first time. We're hitting them over the head with the park test. No wonder. Okay. But then I go, okay, let's look at fourth grade then, just to make sure. So when I look at fourth grade, very similar. You look at some of their things. They went from 96.4 to 90.8. So again, another drop. Look at fifth grade. 10-point drop in their assessment index. Okay? So it's not one group of kids, oh, this is our slow group. No. Okay? This is our, these are the babies who were taking the park for the first time. Oh. Okay, so what else could it be? Okay. And so then I started saying, because I told you I'm an inclusion person, that's my baby, those are my babies. Let's see what's happening with those kids. So I pulled up the special ed. Now this is all grades, so this is all the testing grades 3 through 8. But the same trend is happening with them, like a 10-point drop. Okay, so clearly this indicated that we had to do something to change. Okay.
And Amy, I'm looking to know, this is also happening in math.
Right. Oh yes.
It's a bigger drop.
Yes, it is. Okay. All right, so what we need to do, what we're trying to do then is say, okay, Bossier has been blessed with a group of children who are strong. And so no matter what the curriculum, they perform at a fairly high level. But what difference does the curriculum choice make? If we're talking about a curriculum that continues to veer this way, when we know the test is going this way, every year the difference is going to be larger and larger. Okay? And that is what we're starting to see. The heading in one direction that does not meet the standards to the level of the standard is what's causing it. So let me show you what I mean by that. This is one of my favorite diagrams, okay? Because I'm just going to draw upon my own experience. So here comes confession time. When I was in the classroom, and they gave me the standards, GLE for a while, then the standards. I would scan through the standards, and this is probably what you do, and look for nouns. Oh, metaphor. Okay, yeah. No, you grab words, and you're like, oh, I do that. I do that. I do that. Okay, complex sentences, I do that. Okay, compare contrast aspect, yeah. Okay, and you don't look at what the standard says about that, but just that you're supposed to address that thing. Okay, so let's say that in my class, and I had inclusion, so if I said, can you find a metaphor in this stanza of this poem, and they could, it was like, touchdown, oh my gosh. I mean, the fact that they could find a metaphor, I was like, job done, baby, let's go. I thought that was it. But that's not what is asked now. Back when you first were hitting the standards that way, and you were in alignment, you could ask, find the metaphor in this stanza, and you would hit the standard dead on. But the standards have changed, and your instruction may not. If you're still asking what is the metaphor in this stanza, that is not what children will see on their assessment. When they are assessed, the question will be, look at the highlighted metaphor in stanza 3. Evaluate the effectiveness of the author's choice. That is what they're asking. So, if you are addressing the standard by the noun instead of by the verb, okay, then you are missing it. Your kids are satisfied, and you are satisfied for them to locate a metaphor, but not to interpret and evaluate a metaphor, which is what they're going to be asked to do. So this is where this, for me, came into play. What this does is say that when kids look at text, there's several lenses by which they can look at it. You can ask them details, like what color is the dog, those kinds of things, just to make sure they're awake. Absolutely. And you can even say, did you notice the metaphors or whatever, address it. But then you need to move on the same piece of text to asking them, so tell me what mood is achieved by this metaphor. You see what I'm saying? It's not enough to identify it. Now you have to move up the lenses and ask questions over here that kids can answer with things over here. Does this make sense? Y'all see what I'm talking about? Okay. So, and this is the thing. I mean, most textbooks, when they have the little questions in the margin for you, they don't do that. They don't say, okay, so I mean, they're pretty much satisfied usually with this lens. But what my kids came to realize, and I have this out on, like, I made a big poster of it, and we use it in class all the time. Whenever a scary word was in a question, like to them, the word mood was scary. Oh my gosh, what are we supposed to say? I don't know how to describe the mood or what achieved the mood. I would just say, just slide down the lenses. And they would slide down until they found something that they could talk about. And I could say, well, then how did that thing affect the mood? So like my kids, Edgar Allan Poe, I taught 8th grade. Edgar Allan Poe is the king of mood, right? He's just gruesome. Okay. So my kids knew he's gruesome. They could do that. They probably wouldn't have used that word. They would have said icky or something, whatever. But they would have said, he's creepy. Okay. How do you, tell me how he achieves that? They would have just given me a blank stare. Or they would have put their head on their desk, waiting for the bell to ring. Okay. Until they were able to go on this lens thing and say, well, for me it's the setting. The fact that they're in a cemetery and they're digging through pieces of corpses, or whatever. Okay. Or the person could say, oh, it really has to do with imagery. The fact that they're pulling in all these sensory details. So, being able to use this, and this is what the guidebook is based on. The guidebook is based on a series of lenses. One of the things people tell me to teach the guidebook is that we stay on a text forever. We use the same text for like 5 days. And the kids are like, why are we looking at this text again? And for me, this was really important to have on the wall so that I could say, because we're moving lenses now. Okay, we're looking at the same thing, but we're not looking at it the same way. Okay, so anyway, you have this PowerPoint in print, but I'm going to be sending it to you electronically, my hope is. And I thought you had to make one of these letters for your room. Okay.
I have shared it already with the coaches in a Google folder and all of the handouts. And so I thought that the coaches, I could share it through them.
Awesome, thanks. Okay,
I did that last time.
But see, first, for me, I know this is like kind of embarrassing, but I needed the reminder. I needed the visual. So it wasn't necessarily just for the kids, it was also for me. So I could say, okay, I need to ask another question. Can they seem like they understand this? So let me move lenses. I'm like, do they really understand this? And then I would just move. And they would actually notice, aha, you're moving over some, or they would kind of tease me about it. But like, this was something that we all worked from. So this is the second thing. The first reason was data. We're seeing a downward trend. How are we going to stop it? The second thing, alignment difficulties. Not approaching the level of rigor by asking the correct questions because you didn't have the correct questions to ask. But having this and understanding this little journey that we're on with kids. There's one of these for literary text. There's also another one for nonfiction text. So that if any of these things don't really match when you're talking about nonfiction, there's one for that too. We can make sure you have access to it. Okay, so those are the first few reasons. The next one is the connection to social studies. Did any of you participate in the social studies field test? Anybody have kids that participated in the social studies field test? All right, hands down. All right. For anyone who saw the social studies field test, and I know that you didn't sit there and actually take pictures of the screen with your phone. I know you're not an espionage person, but I'm just saying, if you just happen to glance at the screen, it looks a ton different. A ton different. Because why? What are they asking kids to do? I was one of the people who monitored it for the state, so I know really well what it asked kids to do. And that was to click back and forth between multiple stimuli the entire time. There was almost no, well, there were very few, but some questions just based on knowledge. Okay, but mostly it was application using documents. Because that is the shift we are seeing in social studies. Again, it's going to fall on ELA teachers, big surprise, to make sure all kids are getting a steady diet of that. So if we can do the units that have to do with social studies, that's a no-brainer. We're going to be able to really incorporate those things. They're going to have multiple tests. They're going to have emphasis on analysis, not what does it say in paragraph 3. but like compare this person's view to this person's view, who is biased? Whoa, third grade, really? Yes. And then turn around and write about it. Write about it. Okay. So, these are the things that led to this decision. I just didn't want you to think that there was a room of people who were like, how can we make love teachers' lives miserable? It's only June, but we can do it now. Yeah, okay, all right, okay. So I wanted you to know there was data behind this. I just want you to know, okay. And it does bear out. I mean, I see you nodding, several of you going, yep, that's true. Yep, that's what I see. So this is the reason why this is happening. So I'm going to ask you now if you have a moment to kind of hear the beginning of my sermon, to stop, and I'm going to ask you to move because I want to kind of take the temperature of the room a little bit. So here's the thing we're going to do. Here's the front of the room, and this is going to be absolute chaos. But that's all right. Here we go. What I want to do is I kind of want to get a visual in my mind of the level of your exposure. Okay? At this moment, don't worry about it. Just be honest. Tell me where you are. If you have heard of Guidebook 2.0, Learn Zillion, if you've heard of it, this is your corner. If you've never heard of that till this moment that I'm speaking, that is your corner. If you have read through it, this is your corner. If you have implemented it, like I've actually done some of the lessons, this is your corner. Ready? Good.
How are you doing? I didn't see you here. You have Hi, Jamie. How are you? Good. I haven't seen you guys. Oops. Well, I figure I can do all this extra.
Ask you a question.
Okay, let's look at what we've got here. It's just a little brief snapshot of who is our audience. That's important data for me right here. Okay, first of all, we've got our Bossier Parish. What's a guidebook? Okay, we've got I've heard of it, but I don't know much other than horror stories. That's over here. Okay. Then these are the people who've like, well, I was at least able, while I'm at the pool, to scan through on my iPad and look at a couple of lessons. That's these people. Okay, and then there's Abby. Okay. Okay, so now have a seat. I just wanted to know where we were. Okay, have a seat. So you're not alone unless you're Abby. Class. Yes. Okay, so what I found out is that we're not alone. And I really appreciate it. I heard someone say as they were walking back to their chair. I've done Guidebook 1.0. She wasn't asking that right. We're talking about the 2.0 learning. So the clarification that there is a difference. If you have battled your way through 1.0 and really tried to teach 1.0, can you raise your hand? Okay, so there's two. Okay. All right. So there are going to be some specific things that you will hear those people who just raise their hands, you'll hear them squeal during sections of what we talk about, because some of the things that have occurred in 2.0 are in direct relation to people who were working in 1.0 and were very frustrated. So there were some things about it that were not user-friendly, no big surprise. Okay, and so that's what 2.0 is about, is taking the same, or just about exactly the same lessons and turning them into a teacher-friendly mode. All right, before we get any further, can I ask you to do this? You can do this, I guess we want to do it as a turn and talk so that you can be in partners or tutor groups based on your table. Not whole group, if you don't mind. Let's do just a partner so you can really be honest. Okay. And would you do me this favor? a two-pronged discussion. First is, what do you know about it? Okay, what do you know about 2.0? Not just Guidebooks, the original, but 2.0. And then, what do you want to know? And with the two of you, kind of make like a little bulleted list of, I hope she says this, it tells me this, and I want to know this. I want to make sure I hit all of your questions. So if you would, have a brief discussion, two-pronged. First one, what do I already know? Second of all, what do I hope she answers, or what are her questions? Ready? Go.
So you're not.
It sounds like your conversations are starting to die down a little bit, so that's good. I mean, a natural break is encouraged. I wanted to say, briefly how much I appreciate the fact that you are not on your phone right now. Last week I did a training, and or 2 weeks ago I did a training, and I guess it was also Christmas in July on Amazon. And every time there was a turn in talk, people were like buying ice chests and stuff online. I'm just saying. So thank you so much for your attention today. The fact that you are, I know, keeping it close to make sure your kids are not burning the house down. I get it. But also trying to really fully invest in this and have a conversation. Hopefully some of you have a list somewhere at your table of the things you're hoping that we cover. I'm going to start talking now and see how many of your little things I hit. You're ready? All right, first of all, you know, and I think it's been clearly expressed over the last few years, that the goal is for kids to be able to read, understand, and express understanding of complex grade level text. And that does not mean that does not include scaffolding, okay? And that's an important thing that we need to make sure everybody knows. Because you're like, well, that's great, but that's not the real world. We all teach in the real world, I remember, okay? But that doesn't mean we can't provide the scaffolding to make that possible for all kids. The number of kids who cannot read on grade level is great. The number of kids who can't think on grade level is very small. Let me say that again. The number of kids who can't read on grade level is great. The number of kids who can't think on grade level is small. And so denying them by saying you're not really a strong enough reader to do this, so we're providing an easier test, is a sellout. Because you are now no longer allowing them to do the on grade level thinking because the text doesn't support that. So you're going to have to build supports in the text, but not sacrifice the thinking. That's the part you absolutely cannot do. So here's what we're trying to get kids to be able to do. To use language and vocabulary to comprehend what the text says. To use topics, themes, and ideas to comprehend what the text means. And to build opinions on text. To have a discussion with an opinion. And to write about the text using evidence. And also grade level conventions. The one my kids had the hardest trouble with was that they thought they didn't have a right to an opinion. They were just like, well, this is a famous author and I'm not, so I guess this is good stuff. You know, I don't personally like it. You know, this is Edgar Allan Poe. He's not from my century or whatever. Yeah. So, you know what I'm saying? I mean, they thought, well, you know, he's here for some reason. Obviously, he's a classic. You know, who am I to say that he's not effective? Okay, but then I would argue with my children, and you may want to have the same argument if you have kids like mine. If I show you a piece of art, especially if it's modern art, kids will go, that's ugly, my sister could do that. I mean, I don't know if you know about it, they have no problem giving you their opinion, and that's a famous artist. I can turn on music, Frank Sinatra, crooning New York, New York, and they'd be like, that is so lame. I mean, they would give me feedback. I go, that is an artist. You have an opinion and you feel like it's valid. Why can't you do the same thing to Edgar Allan Poe? Why can't you look at something that we've held up for years and say, does it stand the test of time? What do I think is effective about his choices? What do I not? But taking away that out that kids have, that I can't make I can't actually have an opinion about this. Yes, you can. You know, art is something that's supposed to reach each of them. Is it reaching you? What about it is reaching you or not? So, why 2.0 guidebooks? If you guys have tried over the years to embrace guidebooks and found that after this class, welcome to this project, it was very difficult. Okay, but what is the journey? From the very beginning, Louisiana has been trying to get a compilation of what we consider to be rigorous texts across the spectrum. That started in 2013. Okay, so there were text sets that they were working on, like these are rigorous and all-encompassing for the goals of this grade level. Then they tried to build out units, and that was in 2014. And some of you ventured into those units and probably quickly drowned. I'm just saying that because I know what that felt like. It was just text, text, text. I mean, it's hard, but just the directions were not even user-friendly. Okay. And then now we move on to Guidebook 2.0, which is a user-friendly version of what was happening in 1.0. Okay, that's the main difference. So, one of the first things I want you to know is that this curriculum that we were talking about, 1.0, which is now being converted to 2.0, is one of the most sought after curriculums in our nation right now. The company Learn Zillion came to Louisiana Department of Education and said, we have been hunting for the most rigorous and complete curriculum in the nation, and we would like to use yours on our interface. Okay. That was just mind-boggling. I didn't know if you knew that on our little LDOE website, all different states have been accessing our stuff. Okay, well, we're able to monitor that and know that it is being used by other states, but this is going to make that a million times greater. But I also wanted you to know, and it was just written up in Ed Week, like this last week, as one of the top curriculums in the nation. So I'm just thinking that our little local people have done something really awesome. But that doesn't mean that it was perfect. Because 1.0 was riddled with difficulties, in my opinion, from a teacher's perspective. Like, I would be glancing through Unit 1, and Lesson 1 would take me 3 weeks, and it would go on for 4 pages of solid typing. They were just like, this, and do this, and do this, and do this, and do this. And I was just going, is there somebody for whom this is supposed to happen in 50 minutes? Because, you know, or even 90 minutes. I'll just look at it and go, this doesn't seem like it makes sense. I see some of you nodding. We're in church again. Remember, we're in church. Y'all can amen. Okay, then the second thing is like, if I did say, I think I could modify this and I can use this for my kids, I like this. Then I had to go create everything because there wasn't a worksheet and there wasn't, there was all the stuff that would have gone with it. I would have to make slides and I would have to make all those things that would normally be covered by a normal curriculum were not covered. So I spent all my time going, can't do that, can't do this, skipping that, okay, I can do this piece. And then have to go build everything in order to do it. That was what I was spending my time on. And again, see people nodding, you're with me. All right, so these are some of the common complaints, and they wrote them in the nicest way. I'll block you. It's hard to access the text. Who can help me improve my teaching? I see that you want this level of instruction. I'm not there, and my kids are certainly not there. How do I improve them? Or, there's a lot here. How do I even wrap my mind around that? Or, it's great that you've given us these very rigorous texts, but what is their work supposed to look like, and how do I grade it? And what should this look like in a classroom? You're suggesting these grand ideas, but what does it literally look like? So these were the main yeah that we heard about Guidebook 1.0, and I think they were merited. So let's talk about 2.0. Why is this better? First of all, the text sets are included. Each lesson has a tab that gives you all the things that you need for that lesson, okay? And the lessons were designed in 45 to 50-minute increments. They looked across the state and they said, what's the average teaching period? And for K, like 4 through 8, there were some who were on a 90-minute block or a 110-minute block, or whatever. They said, let's go with the smallest segment of time that teachers would be doing a lesson and go with that. If teachers have double that time, they can do 2, or they can do some of their things that they do, like Pearson or whatever, you can do that with some of the other times. But we're going to do it in 45 to 50-minute segments, okay? So before, remember how I said you would look at lesson 1, and it would go on for days, and you were like, am I crazy? Okay, now, not only is it in a 45 to 50-minute segment, but each part is paced. It says 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever. So you know, okay, this is what this is going to take, but my kids add 5, whatever. I mean, whatever. Okay. All right, so text sets are included. Second thing, assessments are included, and when I say assessment, I don't mean little tests. I mean the same ones: culminating writing task, cold read task, extension task, but it comes with an exemplar, student work, and a rubric. Okay, so now all that's gone. As far as like I'm not sure how to grade this or what it should look like. I can just totally see me going to my lowest of low babies, running off a copy of the exemplar, and sitting with them and going, okay, let's read through the introduction together and talk about what makes this a good introduction. Okay, I'm going to take the paper. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and try to write an introduction for me. But giving them that scaffold. Okay, so anyway, so that's changed. Okay, next thing, slides are provided with every lesson now. So you will be guided by a set of slides, and so will the kids. The slides are not super cute. I'm not going to go ahead and say that. If you're looking for a cartoon character that goes bouncing through the slides, I'm sorry to say it's not there. What the slides are there to do is to, like, especially for kids who need visual cues, it will visually cue them. So, like, instead of you going, I said this worksheet, this one, okay, this one on your desk. Okay, you don't have to do that anymore because on the slide it says you will need, and it has all the things. And if you wait, I'm counting down from 30, and I'm going to look at everyone's desk. This is what it should look like on your desk. 30, 29, and then you go by to yes, good. Okay, so they've taken that out as a problem. Student friendly as well. On top of that, there is a size column with every set of slides that has teacher notes that say, this is slide 1, here's the duration, it should take you 5 minutes, here's what you say. Say, students, I think of course, many people don't need that, but they're there if you do. Okay? Basically what teachers should be doing all the way through each of the slides in the lesson. might say, that's great. Thanks for providing me with guiding questions so I can make sure my questions approach the level of rigor we need. But what are the kids' answers supposed to look like? Well, there's a section also called Student Look-Fors that tells you these are the typical answers you should expect. Okay? So on every slide that has interaction with kids, unless it's a slide that says get your materials out or something, there is, here's what you should do, and some suggested scaffolding for that if you have some kids who can't do these things. And then here's the Student Look-Fors. This is what you should see happening. So all of these are now added to what it looks like. All right, so what does a typical lesson look like during that 45 to 50 minute segment? Well, there's some things that every lesson has. They're on this side. And then this is like a menu of options that will exist in some lessons and not in others on this side. So let's look. Every lesson will start off with a lunch. Then it will have the meat of the lesson. And then it will always end with some type of assessing. Now, for anybody in here who is Compass crazy, you know, that's in your mind always, you're thinking about it. How does this line up with Compass? That you would have an opening, that you would present to them, here's where we've been. This is the thinking that led up to today. And here's what I need for you to have out on your desk, and here are today's objectives. Okay, slides that do that. So that on those days when you're going crazy, you're like, oh my God, I forgot to introduce the objectives. Like halfway through the lesson, there have been times when I've been like, hey class, just for a minute, please look over here, I forgot to say this today. Has it ever happened to any of y'all before that you like are so busy about the worksheet or whatever, and you forget to actually introduce them? They're on there. Then the bulk of the lesson, which we'll talk about. But at the end, saying, here's how I want to assess what you heard from what I said today. Every day, there's something. And then to turn it into a close, which I often got points off for because it was like I have 3 minutes left, I don't have time to do my closing. But the closing would be something where we just wrap up with learning for today and we talk about what's coming next. Those are built in, so that's like Compass headline right there. Okay, so what could be in the building section? Well, sometimes it's reading, no surprise. Sometimes it's let's work with words, which is code for vocabulary. Sometimes it's let's discuss. And sometimes it's let's practice, and practice usually means paper pen. Okay. So notice that they don't say let's write, because some kids have a negative to that. Vocabulary, let's do vocabulary, so let's work with words. And they use the words that they think the kids will see as possible. All right. So those are the lesson components. Every lesson is made up of these things. Which, think about that for a minute. To provide the structure in your classroom, where when it's time for ELA, we have a series of slides that we're using as our basis, and every day they get a diet of the same thing. That is going to provide that routine that is nice, really nice. Yeah, and grade level to grade level if they keep doing it. So here's a typical slide. When it goes up on the screen for the kids, it won't have all this little side stuff. It'll just be this. That little side stuff is the teaching notes. Okay, so you could have it on that. On that screen if you wanted, on like a device that you carry around, and you could be scrolling through the teacher notes if you wanted. Or you could print out the teacher notes in advance, which is what a lot of people in the field test did. They printed out the teacher notes. I think I have a copy right here of what they look like, okay? By slide, it tells you, okay? And they highlighted things. They wrote out in the corner, provide this for Tony. You know, like the specifics for each kid that they were worried about. And so each slide comes with all of these things, okay, or each lesson. So let's look at those things. Teacher notes, which we talked about. Pacing directions, like this should be 3 minutes or 20. Directions for like say this way. I don't know if you've ever found that. You have a great activity, but in the course of giving the directions, it's like you sabotage your activity, and halfway you're like, okay, stop, let me do the directions again. Because obviously my directions were not clear enough about what my expectations are, and you found yourself re-giving the directions halfway through. Well, these directions are very carefully thought out. So you could just, if you're not a person who tends to read from slides or whatever, just for the directions' sake, you might read just the directions part and then go about your business. There are guiding questions and prompts for kids. Student look-fors for kids, and then there's a tab called additional notes in case there's something you need to know about this lesson, about where it's headed. Like this is the lesson before they write. You know what I'm saying? Or this is like those kinds of pieces of information about the author or something like that that they think you might need. These are all the things built in to help you be more effective. On one of the opening pages of the unit, there's a list of every single lesson so that you can kind of scan through where you're going. That's the thing at the very back. Then they provide all of the tools for students. You don't have to create any tools. They're already there. That's this little slide. Then right here's the exemplar for that. There'll always be a student exemplar with every tool. So even if it's just a worksheet where you're like, okay, I want you to split page note taking as we read this, then there's an example of split page note taking already done. That if you had a child who might need that, it's already done. You can take care of that. Okay. Also, I told you they have the teaching notes, the slides. Okay, so all those things are already provided. Lots of headaches taken care of. All right. So let's talk a little bit about one of the big barriers for guidebooks. When I was teaching, one of the biggest barriers for guidebooks was the culminating writing test. First of all, if you made the mistake of not reading the culminating writing test, you go through a whole bunch of lessons, then you say, oh, we're at the end of the unit, so let me pull out the culminating writing. Okay, but you were just like, it's gargantuan, and it's frightening. And your kids are going to drown. I mean, you just be like, oh my gosh, okay. But like, let's say that you were actually smart enough to do the backwards design method and look at the culminating writing test before you started the unit. I've learned that every time. Let's say you did that. Still, by the time they got to the culminating writing test, you were very fearful. It is very, just the prompt itself was usually so wordy that my kids, if they could read the prompt, as soon as they finished reading the prompt, they would then wish themselves to do that and put their heads down. Like, okay, I gave you this. I mean, that was what the reaction was all. Okay. So this slide to me is really helpful because this is what I did. At the very opening day of the unit. Welcome, we're starting Unit 1. Okay, what's the culminating writing task? And I don't just know the culminating writing task. The kids know the culminating writing task. And every day, I ask them in my closing, so how did we just climb the mountain toward the culminating writing task? What did we do today that directly empowers you to do this? And there were times that my kids would go, can we like skip over a set of tips and just go, I'm ready, can we just do it now? And I was like, no, let's keep plowing. There's got to be something in these lessons that we need to have for our journey. But for them to see this as, this is the top of the mountain that we're all trying to climb. We're not saying you should be able to do it on day one. But this is how the state of Louisiana says you will prove that you get what you're supposed to get from Unit 1, right here. If you can do this, you got it. So every day, I challenge you, students, to ask me, what does this have to do with this? If you don't see the connection, you ask me and we'll find the connection. If we don't find a connection, then we're going to move on. Because this is the way you prove, okay? So this is what one of the suggestions I would give is giving them that perspective, not just you. Give them that perspective from the very start. Here's where we're going. And what's going to happen is that there's sections to the unit. And so we're going to camp out in section 1 and do the lessons, but we're not moving on until you guys feel like we got what we're supposed to get out of section 1. And we're going to climb a little bit more. We're going to do several more lessons. We're going to camp out there until everybody's good and we see what it has to do with this. Then we're going to move on. And so each one is a journey toward this the whole time. So this is not this big frightening thing that comes out of nowhere. It's the gauge by which every lesson is measured. Okay. Doesn't this stuff make sense? I don't know if you just got to kick myself for not having thought of this before, but I think it makes sense. All right, so let's talk about the assessment. There's a culminating writing task with every unit. There is a cold read task for every unit, and there's an extension task for every unit. I really tried to do all three. That didn't always happen for me. Again, I had a special clientele. Okay. So, I mean, it came down to it. And I had to gauge which ones I absolutely do. Talk at your table. your number one, I cannot leave this unit without doing this thing. What would it be? Okay? And then, like, rank them. And let's just see what you come up with. Just talk to you among yourselves. It changed very little. It changed the format.
If it was and not an extension, that whole thing.
Okay, come back to me in 3, 2,
Maybe 1.
1. All right.
I mean, I don't know that there's any right answer to this. Because, I mean, everybody's needs are different. So I don't really have like an answer that I think will speak to everyone. And Bossier is a little bit different because Bossier has, I think, in place cold reading assessments already. Okay. Where I was, there was no such thing. There was nothing done by the parish. And so for me, the absolutely non-negotiable was the cold read. The reason it was for me was because it's the most like the assessment. When I think about where my kids are heading, it would be wrong for me not to constantly expose them to the exact same situation or very similar situation to what they will be facing, which is to look at something they've never seen before, read it, and react in multiple ways, which is they're going to have to do some multiple choice type things, and then they're also going to have to write. So for me, that was my non-negotiable. Okay. But since you guys have that steady diet, I mean, you may have made another choice. You know that the whole unit is built on the culminating writing task. So if you the whole unit are referencing this every day, and how does this help us do this? And how does this help us do this? And they're like, what is it? That would be crazy, right? Okay. So the culminating writing task is also huge. And the thing I like about the culminating writing task that I think teachers don't tend to do enough of is that it forces kids to compare multiple texts. And I used to think if I did that once in 9 weeks, I was good. I'm good. But they do it daily. Daily. So it doesn't make that part doesn't become a big deal. The third one was the extension task. And I know Addie was telling me this, she finds this to be incredibly helpful in her classroom. The way I used my extension task was that my kids, I taught the whole year of Guidebook. I didn't just do one. So if my kids had done a good bit of writing in maybe a previous unit, like they did the cold read, which had a writing assignment, and the culminating writing task, which was also writing, it's possible that on the next unit, I might choose the extension task because it was some other form of expression, like a debate, or make a PowerPoint, or some other alternate way of expressing their understanding, and for some of them, they needed a break. So there were times where I did it that way. The way the unit is built, it's going to assume that you're going to do all of them. Okay, it's going to have slides and lessons to go with all of them. Okay, so just so you know that those are supported in there. And I want to remind you that it comes with, each of the things comes with 3 parts: the prompt and the rubric. And the kids can see what the rubric is going to be about in advance. I think that's helpful. And then an actual rubric that you can use. And then an exemplar student response, which I think, again, hugely helpful, hugely helpful. What should this look like? So Bossier has decided that in the third 9 weeks, everyone will implement a unit. This is the unit they've chosen for you. It's the Louisiana version. But don't feel like you have to only do that one. Many people who've started to discover what the guidebook has to offer have said, maybe we should do some groundwork so that they're not blown away when we go there. Maybe we should try to use another unit, or at least implement some of the strategies and structures before we hit that, so they're not totally blown away by, you want us to do what? I mean, that's going to be different. So these are the ones that when we looked through the unit for a second additional recommendation, we recommended these. One, because they focus very heavily on an anchor text that you may very well already have. Okay? It is not the same thing to use the anchor text and to use the guidebook. Lots of times I will ask teachers, do you use the guidebook? Yeah, we do it, big boy. No, not the same thing. Not the same thing. Using the text is not magic by itself unless we ask questions of the level of rigor that they are going to be asked. So it's not the same to just say, oh, we're using the whipping boy, so I guess we're doing 2 units. No, that's only if you're doing the unit. Okay, so just make sure that you're really doing it to the level of rigor that they suggest. These are also inexpensive, fairly inexpensive units. So in case you're taking on any kind of extra burden. So, what I'm going to ask you to do now is I'm going to ask you to take a moment to explore LearnZillion. Some of you have computers. If you don't, there is a card right here. It's full of computers. If you want to grab one, what I've understood from Ms. Ed is that they're free for your use. To come grab one, get on there, hook up to the internet immediately, and you guys just go start looking around. So how would you do that? You can go to learnzillion.com. When you do, you can create an account. They're free. And you can log in or log into your account if you already have one. And I'm going to ask you to go, when you first go into LearnZillion, they'll have all of these options. These are other things LearnZillion offers. Many of you probably have used them for that. And go to the very bottom. Notice it doesn't say Louisiana English Language Arts Guidebooks because the whole nation is now accessing this. Oh, what's that? Anyway, that's why it does that. Okay? And then I'm asking you to kind of click around, find things, look at stuff, write questions like, what's this? How do I use this? I mean, how do I get there? I can't find this. I just want you to spend 15 minutes. The fact that you haven't done that while I've been talking is so nice. To have not been like, whatever, and I've been clicking the whole time. Thank you for waiting. But now I'm going to ask you if you would dig in, play around, write down questions. Because our next section is a Q&A session where you get to ask me or the ladies who help design the units about the things you see, or the district personnel who answer those kinds of questions. Is there anybody who needs a computer? Great. Okay. So if you would, click around, get yourself in there and looking around. If you need us to help you access it, ask. So our time right now is 9:07. And I'm thinking about 9:25 is when I'm going to start the next section. Okay, so I'm giving you about 15, 20 minutes to play around and write down questions. Really look. Really click everything. Okay.
And come over here so we can hear what y'all were saying real quick. Okay, I do have some questions. They don't have Guidebook 2.0 for second grade. So I've looked over the third grade ones, but now I can't get it on the state website. It's not there. I sent you an email. Can you forward it to me? And Crystal, do y'all have it? Did y'all get it? You got the unit that we're using for today? To plan from? No, for third grade. I'm already on LearnZillion, and it says it's coming early 2017. Because it's not on the Parish website either. So what are we supposed to be doing? It says coming early 2017. And when I click on it, am I on the wrong spot? And then I clicked on, like I clicked on Losing a Purchase because that's the only one on our desk. Well, it tells me the unit sold, and when I hit get started, it just shows me a video. And when I do text access, let's see.
In the iPad.
That's what I'm saying.
iPad.
It's like whenever you actually come out to me, and then when I clicked on these, there was a key here. Okay.
Great for you, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I could just
Were you in that workshop?
Oh, I just get it on here. Okay.
Y'all are gonna get it on the first day. Sorry.
Take the time to look around. You didn't get yourself later, you can ask when you have questions. So really click everything.
Oh, okay.
I'll go back and look at it.
Okay. You can see what's there. Additional. Okay, I see now.
What do y'all like from boxes? Okay, so they can have it too. You can rip it out. Or yeah. Yeah, some teachers use yeah. Well, look, the other thing I was
Maybe coming back, like, to school, and I'm trying not to freaking, of course they don't know, it's just everybody and I finally got out and I was like, we're just going to turn it red.
Here's the cat, like PowerPoint presentation. And then they can just turn it together. And you can even have them make like collaborative presentations.
Now,
Everybody will
I'm
pick one, but like
everyone,
have side
they
by
like,
side.
great,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry for that. And then that way they can. And I'm just focusing you to make sure you're really with questions, very specific questions. Make sure you're using your time wisely. Got about 5 more minutes. You would spend it feasting and looking at everything. Yeah, all of our real
Right now, they take some of these students because we're still working on writing.
you need other.
All we do, how much time is it? I don't know right now. I'm just going to say. And I don't remember who you are. I don't remember. I
Make sure you're clicking through and looking so we can answer any questions you have.
Yeah, she was.
I've never actually read it. You know, all the
She and her brother.
Yeah.
So my mother changed. She's at the hospital. That your mom is like, you can see her all out. And she was yeah, right now I'm but she has to stay for draw.
I mean, that's just.
Okay, so
Okay, and they have for the whole week. All the coaches, real quickly, please.
All written down, handwritten.
Once you do that stuff and like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I can take his feet off the here, you
Last week in class.
Okay, so now, hopefully you've had time to kind of, click around and locate any questions that you might have. And I have anticipated some of your questions and made slides about those things. So I'm going to go through those, and then you can mark off whatever one of those about that. And then if it's a specific question about the interface, or like what happens when I click this button or that kind of stuff, we'll do that in a second. Because I kind of anticipated that some of the questions that you had were going to be district questions. Okay? So let's talk about it. One of the first questions I thought you might ask is, what should our lesson plans look like? By the way, this is not what I thought, I just need to change it. It's what the coaches and I brainstormed about what we thought you might ask. Okay. So what should our lesson plans look like? Good question. Of course, this is something that is opinion by your school and will continue to be. So if you have a preferred format, you should, yes, continue using that. And later, when we are building a bank of lesson plans for the whole unit, we're going to provide you with the one that is the district's lesson plan format, which is, you can fill it in as you go or whatever. And so that's what we will be using and be available to you electronically. But if you want to modify those for your school the way you want, that's perfectly fine. But so that is okay. We're not saying that everyone has to use the same lesson plan format. Another question you might have was, how will the guidebook unit affect our pacing guide? You know you have this district pacing guide, and you may be heard about that. When I posed this question to Kay and Julie, they said that you would still be expected to teach the skills from Pearson while still using the guidebook, and that you will hopefully discover that it's not going to be that big of a challenge. But I did want to say this. Remember that the guidebook units are 45 to 50 minutes in length. That means you will have time. It's not like, I just don't want you to feel like this is going to consume all of your time. The pacing has been done very specifically for these units. In fact, they were all field tested, and they were given feedback from the various schools all over the state that were using them about pacing. This is unrealistic. Change this to this. So they have been time tested, okay, as far as pacing goes.
I got a lot of this unrealistic.
Yeah, that's on my head. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure you knew that they have been tested these times they're allotting. So it's not something that just some person in a cubicle typed in and they haven't actually done it. A whole lot of teachers did it and sent in feedback, which you also have the ability to do on LearnAgility. I will show you in a minute. Okay. All right. Next thing is, how does the Guidebook 2.0 align to Compass? I sort of highlighted this before. It does very well. As far as covering the things that you might want. Another thing I know that you want to do is, in order to move up the Compass rubric, that you want to empower kids to take over and to do the discussing, right? Less talk by you, more talk by them. That is also incorporated into Guidebooks 2.0, having them taking gradual release of responsibility and them owning it, and you're providing all the scaffolds to make that possible. Also differentiating for different students, you'll see that in the teacher notes, it's very explicitly explained how to do that. I have a little story about that I want to share real quick. I was at a little school in Gina, Louisiana, and there's this lady who is a very good teacher. And she told me, I tried to use Guidebook 1.0, and there was one specific, I'm very dedicated to it, but there was one lesson specific that I just had to drop because it was completely unrealistic. I said, oh, I'm so curious. look at it on 2.0. What was the lesson? And she said, I don't know the number because the numbers, they didn't have all these numbers in 1.0. It was just a big chunk of units. Anyway, she said, here's what happened in this lesson. She goes, it was about flowers for Algernon. I don't know if any of you guys have kids of that age. You may have had that unit or whatever in 8th grade or 7th or wherever it was. And there was a day where they had to read a section of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, again, written eons ago with long sentences and huge words, right? And compare the main character, Flowers for Algernon, to the plight of Frankenstein, okay? Which is an awesome thinking activity. But she was like, I handed out copies of Frankenstein to my kids. It's okay, y'all, go ahead. You can work in a group if you want, read through that, and this is the set of questions I want. So this is what she did. She said they just drooled all over the paper. I mean, they couldn't even wade through the text. There was no way. Okay, so she just said, this is not worth it. But I had to argue with her and say, it is absolutely worth it for kids to have that type of a rich discussion about whether or not this person in Flowers for Algernon is a monster. And what does it mean to be a monster? If you know anything about that story, it's a science experiment gone wrong. And this person is really trapped. And so seeing it from the monster's perspective, this is a huge moment in this lesson, in this unit. Okay. So she bypassed it because of the text. Okay. So then we went to Learn Zillion 2.0, found that lesson. And when she saw the way that it was presented, with all the scaffolding in place, she was like, I'm absolutely going to do this now. They provided so many options for how this text could be made accessible to kids who can't access it. From small group reading aloud to, doing it in reciprocal teaching, which we're going to see in a minute. All these different ways to make the text accessible to have that conversation. Eliminating that conversation would have been a crime. It's just the text that was standing in the way. And finding a way to make the text accessible is one of the things that's going to be our challenge. So how do we access supplementary text? To me, and I've mentioned this to the Bossier team, this is going to be your biggest challenge. There's no doubt it's going to be your biggest challenge. First of all, you do have all the anchored text for your unit. Those have been purchased, and they should be on your table. But then, Karen, oh yes, please.
Interrupt right here. The novels were ordered, the anchor novels were ordered last spring. They just reached the warehouse. And so as soon as I can process them, count them and everything, and make sure that everything is correct, I'll be sending them to your librarian. And I'm going to ask the librarians to please help me by putting stickers on, because it's like 4,000 books. And it would take me till February to get them out. And so I want to let you know. Also, there will be, I ordered some extra copies in case. What I did is I went by last year's teacher numbers. And so every teacher that taught ELA will get their own set of 30. But I did order some three extra sets of 30. And I'm trying to build a resource library of textbooks for teachers at best, where you can go and check out those books if you need them. If you don't have enough novel sets, then they will be available at where Karen Flower's office is, and you will check them out through her. And I think it's going to work. I've also asked her about asking the librarians to help with the purchase of the supplementary text. I know some teachers said it would cost $500 to $600 to get all those texts, and I don't know, Meredith and Addie, did y'all find that supplementing?
Yeah, well, because some of them were not in print at the time. Some of the prices have gone considerably higher than they were.
Yes, I noticed it just before I could get approval to order. It took about 4 weeks for me to get approval of the money.
Treasure Island's really cheap.
That's why I said that's why.
It went up a couple of dollars just from the time I was looking at it to the time I was,
I can have a private conversation about how I ordered all of my texts, but it is not a conversation I can ignore out loud.
I was just going to say, there's
I don't want to be cute with
some things are available digitally. or there are some times where, yeah, right. Some things can be shown on the screen, and whatever, that kind of thing. Some things can, be done other ways.
And they're continually adding to the resources on the Arctillion page where it has the link. It also has a link where you can go in and purchase novels from the American Reading Company. And it shows you on that first day, it's a link there. And they have a live link that has digital access stuff.
And something else that I found helpful when I can't find a particular text, I was telling Addie this morning, is 7 times out of 10, you can find a teacher reading it aloud on YouTube. There's a YouTube video of a teacher reading whatever book you're looking for.
That's a great suggestion.
And if you've got multiple Chromebooks, you can even have them, multiple times, show it whole grade, and small grade. Most teachers have recorded read alouds on YouTube.
Right. Yeah, there's ways around that for those. I just don't want that to be your stumbling block.
Yeah.
And I kept saying that you need, I was telling a bunch of people that this is the one thing I think that teachers could use as their reason for saying, I'm not doing it because I don't have this. But there are ways around it. Don't let that stop you. One of the people, as I was circulating, was asking a question, if I want to skip a lesson, or if I want to skip a whole section, can I? I guess that's really a decision that you need to make in your group. But my first question is why? Why are you doing that? I mean, because we just discussed how this is a journey up this hill. And so you're saying, I don't need that step in the journey. And I'm like, really? Wow. If these are only 45 to 50-minute lessons and your reading block is 90 minutes, if you're saying pacing is an issue, I'll be very surprised. Because you are going to have time to do some of your other things also. I really wouldn't just think, we're going to have movie night this week. So I'm just skipping this section. I mean, I really would be careful about that. That's standards that you're eliminating. That is steps in the scaffolding that you're removing. And so we're saying that in order to fully equip kids for this culminating writing task, they need these steps. And you yank a whole section of those steps away, I would really be really careful. I'm not saying that there's no time that would happen, but I would not just randomly edit. And y'all know it better.
That is so true because I looked at, I think it was 5th grade. I went with the culminating writing task and I broke it down and I looked to see how each unit supported the culminating writing task because that is the most difficult for all students. And it really does support the culminating writing task and the code reading. And so, that's why you don't want to skip any of that, like Amy said.
And I'm not saying that there's never a time, but I think that my first year doing it, I would probably try to do it as true as I can so that I can make, informed decisions about editing. You have something you want to say to me?
Yes, please be sure, even though your kids are going to look at this as a little fun book, this is a textbook. So please be sure it's treated as a textbook, kept in your room, not like to go home for fun and that type of thing. We cannot be replacing these. That's one of the issues with guidebook units is the cost of implementing them. So that's why we're starting with one. Because if we're asking you to do this, we've got to provide you with the text. So please be careful, and we'll see how it goes and how we can fund more if you all, are liking guidebooks and want to do it. But at this point, this is all we can afford to do right now.
Which question?
So will our class copies be paperback as well?
Yes. They're just like this. This is what
We
we got.
can afford the other ones. We're very fortunate to afford.
This had to come out of our funds, not textbook funds.
It was almost $40,000.
Just for one book.
For one book for third, fourth, and fifth.
Okay, moving on.
And we're happy to do it.
Yeah.
We're excited.
Okay, moving on. Okay, the next thing we might want to know is how are we supposed to get grades? Because it says culminating writing task, cold read task, that's not enough, and the enrichment task, that's not enough. I mean, what are we supposed to be doing? Okay, great question. Okay, first of all, get that in your head. It's a school site decision what you use for grades. Just make sure that whatever one teacher in their grade is doing for grades, that this is consistent across your grade level. That you don't have one teacher who's doing this way and somebody else doing, I'm only giving 3 or whatever. It needs to be have an assessment plan that's consistent. And oops, this must be an old version of the PowerPoint because I left it blank right here because I didn't know the answer to this. So Julie and Katie, can you tell me where the cold reads come from?
Yes. The code reads you have a choice at your school. It will be a designated decision by your administration. You can either use Reading Street, or if your school has a selected resource that your administrative people want you to use, then you will use that.
All right. You know the culminating writing task and the cold read will be used by all teachers as grades. That's so your district has said that those two are mandatory, and that you are encouraged to use the extension tasks with whatever modifications are needed in order to make that another viable source of a grade. I want you to know that from your district, we found out that teachers will not be required to give the benchmark weekly CPR or unit test stories of 39 weeks in case this was your question. If the school site wants to continue doing that, they can, but that will not be an expectation of the district.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we give the Pearson weekly readings, but isn't that the CCR test?
Okay, I'm sorry, what?
We give the Pearson reading a weekly cold read, but not the CCR?
You can give the Pearson reading code read. Also, another option for you, Lydia, is that Lydia?
Yes, ma'am.
What you could do is use at ReadWorks, if your principal approves ReadWorks, you can put in, you know, by skill, by Pearson Reading Street skill, and you can have a code read, and those are very good.
Yep.
I wanted to say, I really wanted to highlight the last answer on here because it's the one I read. And that is that Guidebook 2.0 lessons end with an activity every day that's called Let's Express Our Understanding. And so those could be things that you take for a grade on a more frequent basis. So just want to make sure you realize that just because we don't call it the culminating writing test doesn't mean that it's not a small way to assess your kids' understanding at any given point.
I think you're going to have more than enough things to take for grades, because when you think about the culminating writing test, because you'll want to do that because it relates in unit into your writing. Also, the code reading, you need to do that. The extension test, you ought to do that because even if you're scaffolding and giving them support, it's great, because I read those also.
And the higher ability kids.
Yes, and if you want to do small group, you can break it down like that. But the main thing is it being consistent. You need to talk to each other, and your PLC is important to be consistent across the grade level, because when those report card grades come out, the parents start comparing and everything else. And if one teacher has really low grades and the other one has really high grades, there needs to be, there's a problem somewhere.
One of the questions that may have been on your little sheet is how do I teach grammar? And so I wanted to let you know that grammar elements are embedded into the Learn Zillion unit. If you clicked around enough, you probably have noticed that. And so like maybe if they are asking students to do writing, then there'll be a slide or two on building a compound sentence and how that's done, to do modeling, and that is built in on the slide. So let's say that that's not enough. I wanted you to know that many of you do like the first 5, and Addie, I think you suggested that you could use images from the text as a jumping off point for writing their kernel sentences as part of the first 5. Another way to connect those things. Also, the guidebook units have a grammar guide as one of the first sections when it's like, I can't remember what it's called, like opening materials or unit materials or something. Like the very first thing you click on, the grammar guide by grade level is in there. And what it does is it tells you what are the standards that you're held accountable for. Also gives you writing samples that highlight good examples and poor examples of those things so that you can use those in class. That is part of the unit.
And also, I just want you to remember that AKC, we do begin with kernel sentences, but you've got to move them on to paragraph and essay writing, And also this year, we've had a lot of people trained in whole brain with the writing aspect. You know, you're free to use that. It's excellent also. What was I thinking about? Oh, when you do the grammar embedded, we always ask that you do grammar, teach grammar within the writing.
And that's what's done in English.
It is, and I was glad to see that.
Oh, and third grade while I got you here, I guess you're aware that you must teach cursive writing. Now Louisiana law. And it's required to be taught and learned by the end of third grade.
And we changed the grading for writing.
Yeah, the grading policies are gonna come out, and there's a change with, handwriting. You're just gonna get either an S or an N. No more O's, no more U's. Same thing for P, R, and
Thank you.
so anyway, that's grading scale. You know, you gotta take one grade weekly.
Yes. ELA, we expect one grade a week at least,
Minimum.
minimum. No, but this year you will because of, with the state mandate, it really goes in effect in 2017, but we're going on and getting started in our period.
All right,
We use that as our
one of
budget. Have
the,
to provide somewhere for everybody to use the same thing.
priorities of your new superintendent is to utilize PLC and to utilize them to true to the ideology of what a PLC is supposed to be, and not as like a department meeting or whatever. It's actually going to be, learn meetings. Okay. So what we think is that since this does not occur, you implementing this may not occur until January. Some of you are implementing early other units. But you will have time with your instructional coaches to really dig into what this unit looks like, find out specific structures that you need to be building in advance so your kids see this as a smooth transition. So instructional coaches will be receiving a lot of support on how to conduct PLCs, and then we will be making sure that they're comfortable answering their questions regarding Guidebooks so that they're able to meet with you regarding that. And then also K, we'll continue to support the coaches, Julie, with those things.
And we're very fortunate to have Addie and Meredith that, two go-to people that have taught the units, that have helped or wrote most of the units, or helped write the units. So we're that much ahead of other parishes.
Tell them what schools you're at, girls, in case they don't know you.
I'm at Bellier Elementary, and I'm at Elm Grove Elementary.
And that's Meredith and that's Addie.
Meredith Starr and Addie Kelly. Again, my brain's waking up. It got sucked out of the whole brain teaching.
All right, guys, I'm now on the Learn Zillion site because I want to see if I have some questions about particular Learn Zillion things. One of the things I just wanted to show you that I thought was interesting, and I hope I'm not overstepping by saying this, I just found it. I know it's a big headache to me. One of my big headaches was kids who were absent, and like just, giving them like the same level of instruction, whether the kid's in ISS. I don't know if you have ISS in primary or if you guys have that, but if you have a child who's out of the classroom and you want to make sure they get the same level of instruction that everyone else is receiving, there's a button on every lesson called Quick Assign. Okay, I just wanted to show you this if you didn't notice it on there. When you click Quick Assign, what happens is a code is determined for that particular lesson on one zone. And so what you can do is when a child says, I'm absent, what did I miss? You can say, okay, hand them that specific thing. They can go to any computer, at home, at school, anywhere, and go to Learn Zillion, and they don't have to log in. All they have to do is go to a place at the top, they type in that code, and that lesson appears. So they can be brought up to speed, whether it be like, I'm sick for a whole week, here's the code for the whole week. You know what I'm saying? Like that happens. Okay. Another thing and to me personally as a teacher, that was such a headache. I hated to make that work. So that was awesome. I want you to know that was there. The other thing I was thinking that I would use this for is if you have SPED students, that you would share with your sped teacher the code for the week. And that the teachers could be pre-loading the kids before they come to class and seeing the whole ideas of everything beforehand. Instead of the sped teacher batting cleanup, which is what often happens. It's, okay, I know you were totally confused today. Come here, Mommy, we'll make you better. Okay, which is what we were doing in sped. Instead of that, saying, come here, tomorrow, this is what they're going to do. And like, you're like, here's our plan. And you show it to them in advance. They walk in, they're like, I've seen that slide. I know the answer to this. And they're in a whole different place because they've already got front loaded instead of the batting cleanup. So that's another way I can see that being used. Yes.
Also for your RTI instructors.
Last thing I was going to point out, and then I'm going to let Addie take over, is to tell you that at the very bottom of every slide, there is a place to click for provide feedback. When you do that, it opens up a screen where you can type in your name, it already actually puts that part, and then sharing your thoughts.
Nice.
Nice, yeah, nice.
Can we get a copy of those?
Okay, so here's the thing. I've had a lot of people tell me, I'm just uncomfortable with the fact that this is all digital and that it's not, I don't have like a hard copy. But one thing that happens when you do a hard copy is that now it's rigid. It cannot be modified. Like, people who have worked with Learn Resilient know that there are times when a teacher will say, I've been teaching this unit, and I made this worksheet, and they look at it and they're like, this is genius. And they want to add it, or they want to take a timing thing and go, pacing is not realistic for this. I had these kids and it did not take 20 minutes for this, or whatever. But being able to have this conversation where it is an ongoing work is awesome. Now that does not mean that it's going to be something where you're going to click one day and the whole unit's gone, or they've substituted a whole section with this. That's not it. But that there may be things from feedback that are valuable. I know right now there is a process of making several small adjustments based on the field tests of what teachers have said that they really need. So I wanted to let you know that that's
One of those is because of the pacing from the field test, that there's now an option for if there's homework slides added to some of the lessons, so you can assign.
This particular unit, there's not very many of the slides. It just has like a note, an additional note you can assign as homework because we didn't have that slide yet. So they may not have it yet.
Okay. Are there any other questions that we have not handled that to your satisfaction? I do not want you to leave, especially for lunch, with a very concern that you're afraid to voice. Is there anything that you're like, I just don't understand how this part is going to be possible, or I don't understand why this is here, or what does this let me do, or anything?
Please don't be afraid to ask anything. We're all new to this, so Amy and I don't have all the answers, and Amy's a great source, so please
I
don't
have
be
a quick
afraid.
scheduling question. I did 1.0, and Treasure Island was suggested as an end-of-year text. Are you suggesting that we do it in the fall now before Louisiana Purchase?
It is possible.
The anchor text been switched on that one. It's no longer the original guidebook. So if you have a class set of the anchor text from Guidebook 1.0, it is a different anchor text for Learn Resilient. They had to change it because of
So it's a different version of Treasure Island?
and believe it or not, because I wrote the original unit and I just reformatted it for Learn Resilient, it doesn't align as well as I was hoping. There's a lot of changes. So you may be able to pull out some lessons, but it will not go consistently with the new anchor text that matches.
But it's really not a different anchor text, it's a different version of the same
It's
book.
a different, so the original guidebook was the Great Illustrated Classics.
Yes, that was hard to find. That was very
Well, that's why they changed it. So the new, so for Learn Resilient, it's the classic start version of Treasure Island. I have the old version. I have the old one too.
And on the social studies pacing overview, I have put in where those units should be supplemented if you're planning on doing more than one unit. And some of the units in social studies have been moved around where that can be solved.
But to answer, it was ranked as the most complex one in Guidebook 1.0. That's your question. I don't think it is still that way. I do think it is doable in the first semester.
Okay. And are all the units 9 weeks? So like if we are going to do guidebook all year, we have 4 Anchor text?
The only thing you're going to have a problem with, and this is because y'all are third grade, is you have 4.5 weeks social studies and 4.5 weeks science. And so you're going to have to bring, more, and most of you are self-contained, which is great. So you can bring more of your social studies in with ELA. But I can see that being a concern for you. But I mean, it should be interwoven anyway. And I have your pacing overview for ELA ready, and I have your social studies pacing overview ready. And I have shared it with the coaches, and coaches, I have the old distribution list. I don't have this year's distribution list. So, coaches, if you would share third grade only, because fourth and fifth, I want to tweak it a little bit, okay? You can do ELA and social studies.
I have a question.
Yes, Laura.
Okay, because I know we've met on this and talked about this. And Mr. Reed might kind of interject on this. Okay, so we know from what the data is showing that there is a trend in our data, there's a separation. So if we're suggesting this one unit, how at the end are we going to assess that this has made a difference? You see what I'm saying? How do we go back and look at that later?
That's a good question. The only thing, the reason why we could only do one unit is because we want to get feedback from y'all, and we will be giving something like, Zimmerang or something to get feedback from you. We won't have actually test data except for teacher feedback at this point. But also, because of the cost, we cannot do more than one unit. We tried to do two, and then when we saw it's running about 40,000, we begged for this, and we had just spent $1 million for textbooks. And high school and middle school, they're using the guidebook units. That's another reason why we wanted to go to guidebook units, so we would have that follow through from elementary to middle and high.
Well, and also, if we jump straight into guidebook units, then we have enough work from everybody. Because every year y'all have something thrown at you. And, we hated to make another change, but after we were shown this information, I really wanted to do two, and then I was like, no, that's really kind of pushing it, so.
So we're really just going to kind of look at it at the end, just on teacher evaluation, not so much looking
At this point, that's all right. Now, there are a few schools that are doing 4 guidebook units. So we might be able to see by their results, the difference.
I was gonna say, that just because you're only using one guidebook unit doesn't mean you can't teach like you're teaching the guidebook. But there's strategies that you're gonna be looking at as we go through them, and there's no reason for you not to be utilizing them all along. And then when I showed you that piece where we have the multiple lenses by which you should have students looking at text, that is something you can do on day one. It doesn't matter necessarily what the text is, it's the way you're questioning and the way you're pairing texts that could be happening all along. It's just that we know for sure that the text and the guidebook are of the quality and rigor that they're going to be seeking. So that's where we're aiming to go by the time of January gets. There's no reason we can't do
Yeah,
that.
as long as you make sure your writing tabs, if you already have all sets of units that you're already using and comfortable using, go back and look at them. Make sure you've got a writing tab that matches the rigor of the guidebook. Make sure there's things you can tweak to follow this format, especially once you're comfortable with it, it'll be easy to align.
So the next thing we're about to do before lunch, and this is really going to be interesting, I think you're going to like it, is that we're going to view a model lesson. What's going to happen is she's going to go through a series of slides and do it as for the class, okay? And every so often I will say stop, coaches, hold a conversation, and you'll sort of debrief the main things that you saw, questions you have, points you want to make sure you notice about the way the guidebook works, okay? So what I need you to do now is in your file, you should have a lesson plan, and you should have, maybe the teacher notes for this lesson. My hope is during this time you will watch the teacher model this for you, but also be looking over those items to see how they, how it translates. Then there'll be time for you to participate in debriefing segments.
This is the created from 1 billion. And when you look at it later, the motion was a little different because it's modified the lesson a little bit, but it's just our motion for that.
Is everybody ready?
Okay, so before I start, just a little FYI, I'm going to teach you lessons straight from the Learn Billion lesson, so it's not going to be exactly identical to the Bossier one. But then I will show you how I modified it just a little bit to include Kagan, whole brain, and a kid's toy structure in the lesson. And I'm going to do that at the end, not during the actual lesson. That way you can see what the actual lesson looks like. All right, good morning, class. All right, if you remember yesterday when we read about Thomas Jefferson and Napoleon, we learned about Napoleon's need for power and Thomas Jefferson's desire to grow the United States. Y'all remember when we did that? Yeah. Okay. So today, we're going to take what we read yesterday and discuss the similarities and differences between Napoleon and Thomas Jefferson. So we're going to look at how they're the same, and we're going to look at how they are different. Today you will need, there's an arrow on the left, your book, how to post, would you post a deal? And we're going to look at the sections Buying Louisiana and Spain Accepts Francis Deal, just like we did yesterday. You also need your interactive notebook, your Understanding the Text handout, and your evidence comparison card. You don't have an Understanding the Text handout? You do need the evidence comparison card.
Okay, stop. What slide is that?
This one's 4, I think. No, this one's 5.
Okay, then stop. All right, could you believe 1 through 4, which was the first top point is, right? Okay, good, just go.
Okay, so what did you notice of the lesson you set up?
Everything they have triggered.
Okay.
Students not having code for their
I guess it's in the knowledge
Yeah, I like that. It's all right there. How do you get that's her. Now they look at these taking structures. Just throwing in a different and then she also talked about adding, like, building on previous stuff on the baby. So, how do you, I mean, I know that obviously she could do that with us, but like, how could she have done that? What could she have done to add, you know?
tell them one thing.
Right. Like, what one thing you remember from yesterday? There's no chairs. Yeah. Oh, that's a fun one. They're all holding their hand up and then like, hand up. Sure, what's better with the music. You don't have to do it. I used to
That's like when it's like last year that we the thought was create kids that we would not be names like somebody else. It's not like watching it in there.
she mentioned,
Okay, we're counting down in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're back into our lesson.
All right, so today, you're going to be working in your table group, which you're already in groups of 4. Doesn't matter if you take out 4 and number 5. We're going to be working in groups of 4. So remember, one of you will be the summarizer, which if you remember your job is to present a summary of what we read yesterday at the beginning of our discussion so that we all remember what we read. If you're the vocabulary finder today, then you're going to make sure that we all understand the words. You're going to go back and look at your vocabulary notes in your notebook if you need to. The question writers, you're going to pick 3 to 5 of the questions for your group to discuss. And then if you're the text structure mapper, you're going to lead the discussion about the structure of the text and make sure that we make all those connections. Side step, this is where I interject the Kagan's structure for this, but we'll go with it. So in your table group, your numbers are on the table. If you're 1A, would you be my summarizer? I'm going to say 2B probably, vocabulary finder. 3, the question writer, and 4, the structure mapper. I noticed y'all have the Kagan numbers on your table. So if y'all would do that and identify which person you are. And at the beginning of this group discussion, since y'all not actually read the text, you may want to at least scan to see what we're talking about. You're looking at talking about. So if you were my class, you would have read it yesterday, we're summarizing, but y'all might want to scan through real quick so you're paying attention to text. We're on
In the beginning.
by Louisiana. And
Well, if this is lesson 10, I would think that you would go over these jobs.
wait,
Or even have like a different part of the front of the room where they see each job if you're rotating jobs.
Questions and table questions, and they can come down at a higher thinkers and feed off of that.
right.
You know.
We could understand talking about that, y'all can tell, but it's just it's a strategy to help them. Like, I think this is what I hear you're saying, you say what they're saying, you know, and then the person can know that's all. So it's like a strategy, ways to reiterate, have an academic discussion instead of just one of the moves, talk moves. If you look on the list, I think it's fine, because you're yeah, I'm thinking I remember that, because I really haven't given it to math teachers, but it really works well with teachers. So, especially when we're talking about it, it's a great way.
And practice on actually listening to what people say and making a response
Based on what you're saying, right?
And I realized I was not had the text yet, like, I don't like the way
It's a conversation. Make sure you do it, and to read over the page.
Is it 13 and then 18?
Page 18.
And I'm gonna go back and read 16 to see the deal.
Is that, okay. The one by Indiana is Marvel out of a different text. And so Spain separates the deal as Marvel this one, but you can get both information.
I'm looking at the same thing, but
Right,
I'm.
y'all have enough time to be a little bit familiar with
Doesn't
it,
say page numbers.
step up into the class.
Unless
Okay, so remember, number 1, you're the summarizers. Summarize for your group what you read. Number 2, the vocabulary finder. Make sure everybody understands the word. Number 3, the question writers. We're going to lead the discussion with 3 to 5 questions, depending on how much time your group has. And number 4, at your table, the text structure mapper. Make sure we're making connections to the choices that the author used to write this text. The time on the lesson is about 15 minutes. Since y'all are grown up, let me give you about that.
Y'all have enough to do two full, like 4 and 4.
Right, you really have too many to do.
Yeah, why don't y'all be at 4?
Questions in the book? That's yeah, we're going to be approved in the questions. Also, in the lesson before, you don't have them, but in the lesson, that's the problem. If one at the middle, and you're having to teach you how to remember your questions. It's whatever. But anyway, the kids that have questions in their notebook, you can write it down. Thank you.
One of y'all need a question. Okay. Question. Did you come up with questions based on what we read? Yes. I think probably higher. Well, really, any
She was going to do the teacher notes, not the student. We didn't do the pictures or
Okay, question writer, what question you want me to do?
You were talking about
I would say Tom interview at 25.
I don't understand what you mean by that.
Medical
So what was the question?
Trying to work out.
Would you
Okay, if you would, coaches, look at the prompting question for card 5. And have that discussion.
All right, so we can talk about what are some ways to modify what we just did in class, or things that you already have in place.
Well, some students might want to read it out loud.
Okay.
Some of them I never
So you could have a job that says read aloud. Okay, okay.
In my reading, they could incorporate
Yeah. And the moderator, everything. You know, and then you have
plays out. Because I know at one point doesn't talk about how the home that is how people have been today because they never do have the results of the
Like adding to like have a time
right.
like it's an anchor chart.
They gave us a little bit of information. I
like that.
Yeah, because it says explain what led to that.
Yes. Okay, I wanted to say that this is a prime example. This is one of the reasons why the coaches chose this lesson. A prime example of a time where you would not want first-time students to see the structure to be this way. Now, this is not the first unit in the guidebook. They have been using this structure all year. So they do not have a step-by-step, teaching of the structure in this unit, okay, right here. But if you are someone who's like, I can see the value of this, then this would be something that I would implement all year long. I used this, I did a thing at the Teacher Leader Summit on it. It's called reciprocal teaching. That's what this strategy is called. If you want to Google it or get information about it. But I wanted to tell you that if it is a worthy strategy, your kids will tell you it is, because they will tell you, can we use reciprocal teaching today? When they realize the value of it, they will ask for it. That's how you know that the tool is really good. But what is this tool asking them to do? Well, it's actually asking them to switch roles and to take on the things that we're asking kids to do here are actual standards. Okay, to be able to notice the text structure, to be able to identify the vocabulary in context. All these are different things, okay, that we're asking them to do. And so I just wanted to let you know that the structure is more important. It's not as important as the text. If the structure is too cumbersome, then that is where you would make an adjustment. In a classroom, and this is probably something Abby would have done too. By the time kids have done this, they all are very familiar, so it's not a big deal. But in the beginning of the year, as I was laying the groundwork of my classroom, I would probably have every kid, we're all going to be the summarizer today. And then the next day, as I'm teaching the strategy, we're all going to be the vocabulary person. And we learn each of the jobs. with pieces of text, okay? If you're thinking of how to implement this. Another thing I would do after the whole class played each role would be to say today's text is this. We're going to use this strategy again, but we're going to divide the class into 4 quadrants. This quadrant is going to be my summarizers, this quadrant, and just making whole segments of your class have each job, all 4 get to experience it. Another thing you can do that I found helpful was I wanted every kid to be all 4. So what I ended up doing was saying we're going to do paragraph 1, and this quadrant is this quadrant is this quadrant is this quadrant is this, go. They read paragraph 1, they reported in. Swap, okay. Paragraph 2, you guys are this, you guys are this. That way I can double check, formative assessment, are all my kids ready to do this in individual groups? But it's not something that you would just drop a structure on day 1 and say, well, how come my kids can't do it? If you saw how much trouble you had trying to orchestrate all the parts of it, we don't want that to drown out the value of this text, right? The structure drowns out the value of the text, then the structure is wrong. It doesn't count, right? So this is something that you can slowly implement over time in that way. Finally, we will get to the point where Addie is, where she can say, okay guys, you're familiar with the structure, these are the 4 roles, look to see what role you are, you may begin, okay? But just letting you know that that is where that might have come from, and in previous units they would have probably gone through that, but just a way to make reciprocal teaching work for you, where the kids are teaching each other, just the value of that. Okay, anybody else have any other?
Okay, from the questions that were asked, one, if you have like a special child, special ed child, I'm going to pick on Haley for a second, like she's sitting in a group of 5, so what I would have done is the day before, I would have told her pull-out person, or in my small group with her, we would have done her job as a vocabulary finder ahead of time, and then in the group, she would have shared that job with someone else, so that she would have something to contribute, because her answers would be in her handwriting on her Post-it note in her book, where she wrote down vocabulary, at least 1 vocabulary word, so she had something to contribute. So that's one way you can scaffold, because if you're like being half expected, you're going to look at this slide and go, and it's going to be overwhelming. And then the other thing over here, we were asking about, what about the text structures? That seems like really hard. This is lesson number 10. So up until this point, the kids have had exposure to the different structures. That's why they have a job as a text structure mapper. They talked about, and there should be either their notebook or an anchor chart somewhere in the room, some sort of lesson that you completed because they were built in earlier about a problem and solution text, a sequence text, a comparison track. And then the final one, in the guided questions and teacher notes, I actually put the guided questions that are just to help the kids with their discussion on their roll card that they have like at their desk, either like taped to a folder or almost like a name tag or something like that. And so if they need help guiding their conversation, with the summarizer, what details help me determine the main idea? So as I'm summarizing, I can say, oh, and in this detail, and then the other thing that is in every single guidebook lesson I've written so far are the accountable language stems. There's a handout for them. I also make like a really pretty Pinteresty wall of accountability stems. This is way bigger than this, and I introduce each one a little at a time. And so by now the kids should be familiar with that. So all of those things are listed in the student look board. It tells you what the students should be saying, what they should be talking about, what they should be making connections with.
And what are the sample questions? The sample questions are there too for each job. And the accountable talk stems are also, all that is included in this lesson. You click on the different the different folders.
Okay, does that help some? Because I know it looks like I just walked up and brought the structure that you are not familiar. It's because it's been built in up until this point.
Which helps you to realize why we don't want to pick and choose lessons. Probably because otherwise they're getting the standard exposure to all of these things that it builds. Okay, moving on.
Okay. Now, let's practice what we've learned about comparing and contrasting Thomas Jefferson and Napoleon. You're going to skim back through our sections of text one more time so you're really familiar with them. And you're going to identify characteristics of Napoleon, and you're going to identify characteristics of Thomas Jefferson. We're going to look at how they are the same and how they are different. So as you're working in table group, either with your partner or the whole group, that's fine, either way is fine with me. I want you to record your thinking on your evidence comparison chart. Now, let's look at one together. Pull your chart out. And it's called an evidence comparison chart. You have to support our thinking with evidence from where, boys and girls? From the text. You have to show me why you think the way you do. As I read, I want to think about how Napoleon and Thomas Jefferson are alike and how they're different. I can record my thinking on a chart like this one so that it's organized as I'm doing the thinking. Otherwise, my thinking gets all jumbled and I forget what I want to say. So if I record my thinking on an evidence chart like the one you have, it helps me keep up with all of this comparison and try to keep our thinking we're doing together. Look on page 14 in your text. I can see in paragraph number 4, side note, I would actually do this under a document camera and not just filling it out loud to you, that the author is describing the government in France, and then right after that in paragraph 5, the author says Napoleon takes power. Because I read those two things, I now know that Napoleon is the leader of France. So under my Napoleon column, I'm going to write leader of France, and I'm going to put nationality in the middle section, because I'm going to compare Napoleon's nationality to Thomas Jefferson's nationality. So go ahead and do that with me on your chart. And on your A3 chart, some of the words did not show up. When I downloaded the copy, they were hidden behind the other column. Thank you for the lock. So I will make a note of that and see if there's someone who can fix that so that it's downloadable correctly. I didn't make a note of that. Now that I've figured out where Napoleon came from, I want to keep reading and see what I can find out about Thomas Jefferson and see how he's like Napoleon or different from Napoleon. On page 19, I read that the author wrote, then in 1801, Thomas Jefferson became president of the United States. Can you find that in your text on page 19? Go ahead and point to that so that I know you're listening. Because I read that, now I know that Thomas Jefferson is the leader of America. Napoleon and Thomas Jefferson are the same because they're both leaders of their country. But they're different because Napoleon is the leader of France and Thomas Jefferson is the leader of America. Does everybody understand how I made that connection? Thumbs up if you're with me, thumbs down if you're a little confused, and we're going to say it a different way. Good. All right, so if you needed more help, I got some thumbs down and blanks there. We were like, yeah, I get it, you know the line. You would do another one with them, and another, until you feel like you can start to release that responsibility. If you have a higher group, that's going to be now, it's going to be y'all. If you have a lower group, you might need to stick with them. Maybe most of them get it, and I'm looking and I go, hey, Jamie, Ashley, and Haley, come sit with me, and then we do some work together, and everybody else is fine. That's up to you. That's totally doable, flexible in the guidebook unit. Because you are such an advanced group, we're going to go ahead and let you start. So I want you to continue looking for the different ways Napoleon and Thomas Jefferson are the same. I'm going to give y'all the other column go ahead and put in. The next comparison category is going to be their role, then wants, challenges, outcomes. And I'll go over that again. So it starts with nationality, with that together. Role, wants, challenges, outcomes. Those are some pretty higher order words. So for my third graders, I wrote that in the middle before I made the copy. So that the categories are done. They're not having to figure that part out. Feel free to make that scaffold accommodation for your class. Does that make sense? Okay, so please don't think that I would really think a bunch of 8-year-olds are going to know the words nationality, role. No, they're not. So do that part for them and explain it as you go. This has 8 minutes for all that lecture practice. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to start. So you guys go ahead and find the evidence for that, and we're going to start to do another conversation.
And look, you could have like one, if you were in a pair, you could have one partner look it up for Napoleon, one partner look it up for Jefferson. Now let me find the difference, and I think that they can kind of make a compliment.
Thank you, dear.
that one's the first one.
Oh, I'm on the wrong side. I know that one. Okay.
I like this. There, I love this.
Yes, they both want.
But for different purposes.
Right, so this is similarity.
And then
Napoleon wanted to use an empire that did not want this one.
Well, music, and I don't know if they even
it wasn't a power-driven thing.
right, so, and I don't know if they, I think she could help him.
Yeah, you can, I think you can guide this room.
Now that you've had time to complete your charts, or since you're not quite finished with your charts, we will finish these for homework. Alright. Yay, homework! That wasn't the problem when I wrote for you. I mean, you probably will not see what I would not touch. Am I going to send you home? No. No, I will not.
And it's just 2 pages for each copy.
That would be a you decision, because that would be copyright issue, and not when I will endorse. Okay. We still need to have the conversation. Okay. All right, now with your partner, I want you to discuss what you found on your chart. So you're going to have a conversation with your partner, comparing and contrasting Thomas Jefferson and Napoleon. You have an answer, you both use it. Make sure when you're talking with your partner that I hear you using some of our accountable language. If you're agreeing or disagreeing, make sure you're being respectful, and I always want to hear your evidence. Give your partner page numbers and tell them why you think the way you think and where that information came from. Ready? Steve.
So we have how they're alike and how they're different. So we're talking about and then oh, that's
I like that.
Because you would want to address like everything talked about.
oh, yeah, and I think this is
Yeah, I did.
the giant ones, they are cool as ever. What? Yeah, I bought them. Yeah, it's like the size of a cake, but it's square.
But if you can see the chart like this big, you're not right.
But if you give them that, it's like, oh,
the paper, and I'm going to have it great colors, and then I'm language lesson up there, you know, there. And then you can pull it.
And one thing that I like about you
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, for my color, yeah, I have a different.
Around, yeah.
Or kind of see it immediately.
Coaches, we're ready for you to have a prompting question discussion for slide 6 and 7 now. If you would, go ahead.
Okay, so, okay, y'all are going to how are you, yeah, how are you writing?
Well, they will have to compare the class and for the like text.
The writing tab we bring for you up here on the phone.
But they're
I'm sorry, the page numbers, that'll help you go back with the writing. So you can go back to because they are like in the highlighter. Yeah.
we have paper and we have not provided a highlighter.
With like a pencil.
It says in the directions that the highlighter,
Yeah. So I guess it, whatever it is it's going to be, it's going to be a highlighter. Online, just train them.
it takes next. I think that's the
When I taught fifth grade, we would use different pages. You might underline it if it says something that's out of the text. You might not.
Okay, if y'all notice, that says let's express our understanding, that's the last piece that the kids do before they're done. This is where you can take a daily grade if you wanted. I have a discussion checklist that I use, that I walk around, and we do this so often at the end of these lessons, I won't try to get every kid every single day until like a week. So I might do everybody at this table today, even though we're going to listen to more people, I'm only checking off scores on like this group of 4 kids. And by the end of the week, I've hit all 20 in my room, you know, if that's necessary. And then on the lesson plan, the coaches have for the kids after this slide to do is tell one thing you learned today as their actual exit ticket or out the door. So they made that adjustment to help with that. All right, so today we identify characteristics of Napoleon and Thomas Jefferson. We also practice describing the similarities and differences between 2 people using evidence from the text. Yay, good job today, everybody.
Okay, have a discussion and get to the last part, please.
Great job, Maddie.
And I was looking at other information library over there, but
And going back to that they have an interactive program. They could put a timeline there, and then, you know, add to it. timeline today, so that we're prepared for the writing test, to add that. Right. Because like, this is what happened, and now like
The last question that you were just asked about thinking day versus the writing day. When we talked to the coaches, one of the things they said we want to see when we do a lesson for you is we want to see writing. And what we really discovered as we talked was that it wasn't the writing that scared everybody so much, it was the thinking. Because once the thinking day is done, tomorrow's lesson is, please pull out your chart of similarities and differences. Let's write a topic sentence. You see what I'm saying? And so once the thinking is done in an organized way, the writing day is, I mean, it's really not as big of a deal. It's really the thinking day that's the problem. And trying to put those 2 days on the same day is chaotic, right? Because some kids still processing, other kids ready to write, and you're like, I can't do that. Okay. So what they're doing, and you'll notice that throughout every type of writing task, is that there's going to be a thinking time, and then there's going to be a writing time. That's 2 separate skills, and they need both. So we wanted to make sure you saw, that's one of the main things we wanted to make sure you saw was that this was the thinking day. Now, several people, I just happened to kind of walk around and mooch off of different conversations. People were already starting to think about their particular kids and modifications they would make. That is the job that is left to you by Learn Zillion. I wanted to make sure to make that straight. There were a couple people who said, I've been teaching for 20 years. I do not need someone to print out a script for me of what I need to say. Thank you, I have a college degree. Okay, if you're that person, I hear you. And what I say to you is spend your time building scaffolds for your particular kids. You didn't have the luxury to do that before. You were too busy making worksheets, and too busy making slideshows, and too busy trying to keep up with the curriculum. Now, it's there. Now, take the time to think about Mike. And what's it going to take for Mike to be able to notice similarities and differences? What am I going to have to build? Now you actually get to do the job of teaching and not worry about building. It's done. Okay? So that was the main thing I wanted you to notice from doing this. And also the fact that we dropped you in through the middle of a unit and you saw all the stuff that's happening that they're expecting kids to be able to do all the time. That this is like reason and why it's important to do it with fidelity from the beginning so that they get the progression and things make sense. And also to start building a list in your head of the things you can be building in now to your lessons that will make this not such an amazing, a huge step in change. Okay? So this was a valuable activity. It wasn't perfect, but it was valuable for you to see some of the things that might happen. Okay, Anna, you want to show them some specific things that you had come up with?
Yeah, these are some of the things that, because we use so many of the AKC organizers, earlier in the unit, I used this 2-column notes organizer with one of the sections from the text, and I give you kids keywords to be able to make their summary sentence at the end, which really helps to build for them to be able to do the types of activities they're doing now in this lesson. For all of my kids in this unit, but especially for my struggling kids, this is a syllabication activity that we do with some of the vocabulary. Not those higher order academic vocabulary, but the social studies content vocabulary where it's the proper nouns that are hard for the kids to sound out because they don't always like to follow phonics rules. And so this is a lot of people and places that show up during the unit over and over. And so this one is broken into syllables, and the kids know the syllables and then rewrite the word as we say them. And in this one, it's not broken up for them. That way it's differentiated. It came straight from some of the landmark training we've done already. I like a strategy called keep it or junk it. It's just one particular way for them to highlight different things. So I just found a couple sections on this paper. But then they highlight it so that they can highlight on the actual text itself. And again, do another 2-sentence summary, this time without the keyword box because we've highlighted and done all the annotating already. Just like Kay said, we don't say our kernel sentences all the time. My kids have a lot of problem writing for nonfiction, writing informational text. So after we've had some narrative practice, we do a lot of main idea sentence practice. So it's still kernel sentences for the kids, but it's a nonfiction kernel sentence instead of that narrative creative writing kernel sentence. And this is just some of their vocabulary. So they have to use that vocabulary word in the sentence. And then for the actual narrative kernel sentences, here's one from the very first lesson for the vocabulary word wander. The kids have to use the word wander in their sentence, and here's a picture to help them. And so I made one to go with this lesson, and they used the word treaty, which showed up about a week and a half before. And so this is where they're actually signing the treaty where they purchased the Louisiana Purchase. Of course, it's a drawing, it's not a photograph, and I have to tell the kids photos didn't exist then. And one of my sweet little lovelies was like, wow, this is really old, like at least back in the 80s.
They didn't have their phone?
And I'm like, okay, I'm not an old person, I'm not an old teacher, I was born in the 80s, and I'm like, it's way before the 80s, way before the 80s. So anyway, this is like straight from one of the books. I just was under the document camera, so the word up there, this is where I actually just snapped it with my phone and actually on the slide. We can't add those things to where because there are copyright issues. For me personally, in my classroom, I don't violate copyright when I use things for my one and only class under the document camera and things like that. So anyway, that's how I come up with those. That way the kernel sentence is connected to what we're doing in reading. So I teach my grammar with what we're doing. Does that help show you how it's kind of, you can spread it out and it's not quite so scary? Okay. Because I know when you just watch a lesson in the middle of it, you talk to yourself. Oh, okay. I don't know if I get to do all that. But I promise it builds to that, and then you can add your own structures to it through your RTI time, your small group time, things like that, in addition to in front of the actual lesson to prep your kids for the lesson.
Can you share that with Kay so she can share with us?
I sure will. And then the last one is instead of the evidence form that y'all had in front of you, that's the LDOE one, I just use the compare and contrast form. That's the AKT compare and contrast. And then tomorrow when we get to the lesson, we'll do the main idea sentence on that. And then the next day when we actually write our paragraph, I give you the paragraph form. And so they have all, it builds. We have the organizer, the main idea sentence frame, the paragraph organizer, and we get to revise and edit. My kids are writing at this level, and they did exactly what's up there. I just gave them some additional structures because on their own, without the structures, my kids aren't ready for that.
So that's, I think that's one of the things that, I was just gonna say, that's one of the things that I think was a misunderstanding about Guidebooks 1.0. People looked at the culminating writing task and they saw the expectation that their kids were supposed to be able to do this unassisted, independently, this multi-task, multi-step task with a very rigorous test. I mean, it was just a scene insurmountable. But knowing that we want them to reach that level of thinking and providing them the steps in which to do that is the main difference between 1.0 and 2.0. Those of you who have been doing 1.0 probably recognize a lot of these activities, and they're just paced into like 50-minute segments. Okay. I wanted to see did everybody get a chance during the course of the time that we were kind of doing this to glance at the teacher notes that went along with this. If you didn't get a chance to look at them, they're very helpful. They give a lot of suggestions for how things should be captured. Consider asking these questions. Consider saying, this is what you should be seeing students look for. All of the things you haven't taken time to learn. Probably your best friend.
I guess you could leave it.
Some teachers I asked about this. I asked, during the field test, how many teachers out of field tests printed these out for themselves? And they said, many printed them out for themselves. And many highlighted specific things that were important to them, and then put them in page protectors and made a binder. For those binder, we probably know this, okay? And then with a copy of like the student work completed, and they have their little binder, you know it's for that person, okay? But I want to let you know that, that's perfectly fine, that's how you can handle on this, okay? But it's not meant to be a hard copy curriculum, because a hard copy curriculum cannot be altered. We don't want to be stagnant, we want to be ever moving with the changes. And so for those of you who said, you know, I like this worksheet, but what I would do is make my kids understand it better, I would move the arrows, and I would do this and this, whatever. Once you come up with that, you should submit it. You know what I'm saying? Like when it says feedback, because other people may need that, and they are compiling things that they want to add as scaffold. So please feel free to put your input in anytime. Okay, the next thing I was going to do is ask you if you had a chance to look at the Bossier lesson plan format that went with this lesson. A group of coaches put together this lesson plan based on the teaching notes that accompany the lesson. So what I'm just going to ask you to do now is kind of walk through and talk through that, what they put on the form, and how you see that transferring from the teacher notes to the lesson plan format. Because remember, our job after lunch will be to start doing that process. So that's one less student you guys are going to have to jump through. The lesson plans will already be ready, right? So would you look at it now and see if you can see how did the things on the teaching notes make their way onto the lesson plan format? If there's any questions you have regarding the way that works, just raise your hand and we'll go over it and take a moment.
Slide 137. Like how, sort of like this. How they get broken out and talking. You were talking about how I like to have on here what she knows. Looking them up is really great. Like this, they'll get down the page. It's not like but how you broke that you breaking it up by and then what you're gonna do. Like so it means I can think anything it's like very bullets. Right. Right.
She shared. This is what we use. No, okay, but this one doesn't make it. I like it. Yeah. And off of one.
That was that one that.
Probably I like
Like, to me, that makes sense. Like, I look at that and,
Today, the last 5 minutes,
All right, guys.
This is talking about the fact that within the one classroom, you may be able to differentiate multiple ways, like with that form. If some kids, they really needed to be a basic form, some kids could use this form with no categories, where the kids themselves are compiling information and deciding what does this have in common. Those are both worldviews. I mean, that's an extremely high level thinker, but you have those. And instead of leaving them out, you could hand them one with no categories. And then you could have for your mid-range kids, ones with categories. You know, and then for your, so you can take the same form and do that. But you'll have time to actually do those things because you're not building all the stuff. It's already there. Fine. Okay. All right, so hopefully you see the value in what we're trying to achieve and how we're trying to get there. And so we're about to break for lunch, which will mean that it's about 11, and we're expecting you here around 12:30. So if you can't get somewhere, you need to get back, okay? Remember when we come back, we'll do some planning and like try to really put this together. Okay? You don't have anything to do with your K. What's what we got to do? You don't have anything to
Return at 12:30. That'll give you at least 15 more minutes.
I'm going to take Rosie.
my document sucks, right? I'm doing one. I can do whatever.
You're taking advantage.
Where would you like to go to lunch?
Yeah, I think you stay in
Sorry.
You don't have time to talk right now. I just remembered like that I was supposed to call and wake my child up at 8 o'clock. So I just texted her. I said, I'm going to your meeting. Y'all, you're good friends. Where you go? You don't need me. My friend, no, that's my other friend invited me. Oh, yeah. I have to go feed Parker before I can do anything.
Yeah, that's a
Look, I'm stopping it. Oh, it's broadcast. Do you want? Oh, I'm sorry for what we're doing.